Hi all, this is Skate, and obviously this video is about the Mäuschen. Now I was saying Mauschen, but when I was in Minsk, the raid guys corrected me to Mäuschen. However, I'm probably still saying it wrong, so therefore I'm just going to call it Mini Mouse, just to avoid, well, to avoid my German subscribers pulling their hair out. It's going to happen, I'm going to screw it up, so might as well avoid it. But before we get into it, you probably noticed most videos I do recently, just before the intro, I'll put some stupid clip into that tank that we're talking about. And it could be something stupid, like an ammo rack, or a ridiculous shot, or ramming someone. But this one I just had to talk about a second, because I've played a stupid amount of games in Blitz, and nothing has made me feel as amused and hysterical as this one point where me and Bushka are platooning, sitting opposite each other on a table. Should we try and jump off the bridge on that tank? Yeah, let's have a go. We're never going to hit it. Let's have a go. Every single time. It just makes me laugh. That's my favourite stupid thing I've done in Blitz. Honestly, I was in stitches at that point, to the point where I just gave up playing by here, put my tablet down, and I just laughed. I was absolutely hysterical. It's very childish, but my god, it was worth it. It's by here. So I'm going to cut it at this point. Now, any of you guys who follow my social media would have seen that already, but I couldn't make a video about the Mini Mouse without putting that clip in. It's just ridiculous. But I'll be serious, and we will talk properly about this tank. And I'm actually going to make two videos on this tank. I'm making this one, where I am top tier in both the following replays, and there will be another one where I am bottom tier in the following replays. And the reason for that is I slightly adjust my playstyle based on what tier I am, if I'm top or if I'm bottom. So we are top in the following replays. I think it's about 11,500 damage between the two replays and around 8,000 or 9,000 damage blocked. And I think that's the key thing I want to focus on first, is damage blocked. Obviously, if you're following on from my VK video, the VK101P, you'll see how I tried to play that tank. This is not too dissimilar. The only difference, and this is where it starts to twist slightly towards the mouse, is I focused a lot on the turret. Reason being is because you do the same thing with the hull on this that you would do with the hull on the VK with the hull on the mouse. You angle it slightly away from whoever's pointing at you and enjoy the bounces off the side while trying to avoid that lower plate. And that's one thing I like about these fitting in the line before the mouse, is they're not too dissimilar, and you go from some tanks, like you go from a T30 to an E4, and the playstyle completely changes, every single thing about it. This, on the other hand, you've got the hull down, you've got the general playstyle down. But where I mentioned it differed is the turret. I mean, the VK turret, you need to be pointing at people with the turret because you've got very small cheeks around the gun mantlet. But yet the side armor on the turret, if you angle away, becomes very weak. So you're pointing at them. With the mouse, you need to be angling the turret away with the hull. And the reason being is because it's got very good side armor on the turret, which is completely straight. So angling away increases the cheek thickness and it makes it very difficult to pen. This thing, on the other hand, is pretty much halfway between them. You'll notice that the side of the turret on this thing isn't completely flat like the mouse, which means if you start to angle away too much, what you're basically going to end up doing is make that cheek a really easy pen. Exactly like you can do on a Tiger 2 and an E75 actually. If you look at an E75 when it's not pointing directly at you, you can pen that cheek no problem at all. I say the cheek, the frontal area on the side of the turret. It's quite easy to pen. That's of course unless he's facing his gun at you. This, it's not too dissimilar to that. Very much in the aspect of I do angle my turret away, but not excessively. If I do it excessively, it becomes weak, it becomes an easy pen. So with the VK, you are always pointing at things. With this, what you need to master more than anything is slightly pointing the gun away and keeping your hull moving so that weak spot on top doesn't get penned so easy. And again, I suppose that follows quite nicely up the line. With one of them, you just need to learn on the hull. And the next one, you need to learn to slightly angle the turret and do the same as what you do with the hull. And then the third one, well, you can just angle both pretty much the same. And again, get a bit of a back and forth wiggle on the hull, and your armour is probably going to be the strongest it is at that point. Now, the reason I mention all that very early on is because it's part of the reason why I've done two separate videos, one for bottom tier, one for top tier. When I am top tier like this, you can be surprisingly pushy and you can be quite confident, but when you're bottom tier, you'd be surprised how many things can penetrate those cheeks on the turret. So I like to play it a little bit further range rather than flat in the face, because if you're further away, it's harder to hit those cheeks while you're moving, and there's high likelihoods of people hitting the gun mantlet instead of the cheeks. So it increases the probability of getting bounces. Now, I don't mean medium range. I'm trying to play like, I don't know, a tank destroyer or a sniping medium. Nothing like that. I just don't mean face hugging. If there's something, if it's tier 8, just go bully it. Go sit in front of it and angle and try and avoid as many pens as possible with the angling. With something like a tier 9 or a tier 10, that sort of range we were playing then against that WZ is pretty much optimal for this tank. It's close enough that your gun works more than efficient, but it's not too close that they can easily hit those weak spots. I'm happy that shot hit though, I'm not gonna lie. So far though, we've done 4,700 damage, 2,400 damage blocked. This is when I don't have a choice but to expose my big soft weak bits. I was hoping this would hit, but a bit of RNG after the last shot, I hit the gun. So I'm backing up, and then I realised the T-54 is coming from behind. So I don't have a choice. In this circumstance, if he wasn't coming from behind, I would have just got into a better angle, but I had to make sure he didn't get his clip into my butt. But now I'm angled against him. I'm a one-shot now. But we managed to bounce two. Which means we do manage to get one more into him. And he was going to rush us, which I really hoped he would have, but he didn't. He backs up into cover. And I am going to miss my next shot, but, well, wait and see. Fluff that shot up. ISU to the rescue. So we do win that one. I've got 3,000 damage blocked there. And a total of 5,779 damage, and a steel wall and a mastery for that. Now what that game I hope highlights is A, I screwed up my positioning very early on and ended up just sitting in the middle of the battle for the first minute or two, which really wasn't helpful to my team, and I'm well aware it's a complete screw up. But using the gun depression of that, like I mentioned with the VK before, and hiding the lower plates, trying to pop bridges and shoot people and then move back into cover. Again, it's the whole keep moving thing. And the next one is going to be completely the opposite of that. Rather than trying to rely on hiding the lower plate via that means of using gun depression, the next one's going to be pretty much battling on the flat. Which of course means trying to side scrape that thing. Now, I do want to point one thing out on the side scraping. It's got quite a small hatch on it. So given the choice of side scraping against the left of something or the right of something, I don't actually care. And the reason being is because you'd be surprised how many people just aim for that hatch over and over again. And when you're reversing in and out side scraping, it ends up producing quite a lot of misses, or not hitting it perfectly central and producing some silly bounces. And for those reasons, I don't mind that side being angled off. It's surprisingly amusing. What I should clarify actually, it's not small. It's quite narrow, but it's quite tall when you compare it to the size of the tank. I've got no idea why I'm explaining that. You can see that very clearly. But I'm trying to get the point across. It doesn't matter if you side scrape left or right. The one thing I would say though, is if you can't get the playstyle of the VK down yet, don't go rushing into the Mäuschen Minnie Mouse. Someone's going to correct me if I've said that wrong, no doubt I have. But if you haven't... Yeah, this part was really bad, by the way. So he tried reversing as I was trying to go around the corner, and it just flew over his engine deck. So that was a lucky miss. But yeah, if you haven't got the VK playstyle down, don't go rushing into the mouse. Get the playstyle of the VK down, and then go into this tank. And then once you've got that down, this is going to seem very straightforward in comparison, because you've already got the vast majority of it down. And then the mouse, once you've mastered these two, is going to feel like an absolute breeze. Again, it seems like something stupid, but you'd be surprised how many of you, and me included, will rush just to get up the lines sometimes. Yet, because the basics are learnt with the VK100-01P, you can then go into this very confident, knowing that you've got pretty much the basic abilities down. And like I said earlier, when you are top tier, you can really play this thing on the front line and very close range. Now that doesn't mean YOLO round a corner when you know there's tank destroyers down the other end. Just like the VK100-01P, this thing has a surprisingly big lower plate. In this circumstance, I am trying to use the dead Borsig corpse to basically hide the lower plate while angling round from those long-range tank destroyers, which just took a huge chunk out of that IS-3. So now I'm going to try and do the same thing, being as we know they've shot. I've bounced one, there's bounced another, and another, which just which puts our blocks damage now above our actual damage done. So although we're not side scraping here, we're coming out at an angle, which means our side is safe. At the range they are shooting at me, they're going to struggle to hit those cheeks, and my lower plate's protected. This part's amusing though. T30, broadside, bounce. I think the reason for that is with these tanks, you need to aim for the top half of the side, because you'll go through quite easy on the side. If you aim for the lower half, you've got to go through 100 mil of armor, then you've got to go through the track, and then you've got to go through more armor again. So if you're ever shooting at the side, aim for the top half of the hull. Otherwise, you're going to do what that T30 did, and then be really, really annoyed. I do want to point this bit out quickly, and this is where I think map awareness is a very key thing people forget about. Now that Type 59 is obviously coming this direction. We could have carried on going to deal with what was closest to us, but a quick HE shot, by waiting and looking on the minimap where exactly he was, allowed us just to quickly finish off a target. It may seem insignificant, but that one very, very low hit point medium could have got on my butt while I was round here trying to deal with these tanks. So just a simple thing like that really can go a long way. Now if it meant turning the side of my turret to, say for example, all these tanks down here, I wouldn't have risked that, because that's losing way too many hit points just to take that one tank out. But the fact they weren't meant I could just quickly stop, look at the minimap, see which way he's coming, and pre-aim basically. And at this point we are down to a 2 versus 2, except they have an ISU on full hit points and a Lerva on full hit points. I'm on full hit points, but the IS-3 on my team, he's pretty much got very little health left, as we saw him lose it all earlier. Now I'm not YOLOing around after that Lerva, because we know the IS... Took the words out of my mouth. There is the ISU. We know he's still in that location. So if anything, I need to try and kind of bait this Lerva around the corner to me, which he does do. And then he over-angles while he's trying to side scrape in, which allows me to put one to the side of his tank. And that's pretty much what I'm hoping we can do, is just side scrape against each other, and hopefully I'll beat him before he beats me. He did pen that time though, and in doing so I can deal with this guy before I have to go deal with the ISU. Except, ISU has other plans. ISU is going to pop up behind us in a second, and he's going to very, very quickly deal with the IS-3, which means I'm going to have one in front and one in behind. So I need to deal with this Lerva really quickly now. A ram doesn't finish it off, so I'm trying to angle away from him so I can give my strongest armor to the ISU. I screw that up, take a shot from him and him, which now puts me for a one shot to the ISU. Again, I want to point out I'm not chasing him on the basis of I can get myself side scraped up by here and increase the chances of a bounce. But I don't need to. How's that for RNG? I don't need to try and focus on angling them, because I went through his track wheel and set him on fire. Which, trust me, he was not happy about. But that being said, I was in a position there that if he did return a fire shot, there was a probability we could have bounced it. But we ended that battle with 5,140 damage blocked and 5,794 damage done. The damage, or the block damage, I actually think is more important half the time than the actual damage you do. Because the more you block means the longer you survive, which means your tank is more sustainable in the battle, which gives you more time to do damage, and it also means that it's damage not being done to other tanks. So it's one of those tanks which I've mentioned before in previous videos, you spend more time focusing on, or you should spend more time focusing on keeping your tank alive, sustaining as many hit points as you can by angling, etc., and then worry about actual damage done afterwards, because the longer you survive in a tank like this, the more chance you have of surviving. Again, that doesn't mean playing one of these things at the back of the map and then going, haha, but I survived till the end. No, you hid. What you need to do in this one is move, take shots for your team, absorb damage, and then allow your team to do more damage. But that's where I'm going to end this one. I've probably got a lot more to talk about on this tank, but I want to do it when we're talking about the tank on bottom tier and how to deal with mediums. Or in fact, any tank who's attempting to circle you. It's surprisingly easy to deal with when you're in a mouse, even though it has, or Mäuschen. Damn it! I nearly got there. In Mini-Mouse, it's surprisingly easy with just a couple of simple things. Most of it's ramming because you take their tracks off and it's highly amusing. But we'll cover that in the next one, otherwise I'm going to go on and on. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.